Welcome back to The Line. The Albuquerque Journal reported this week that the Albuquerque Public Schools will begin offering ethnic studies classes in all high schools next year. Laura, real quick, the Journal reported this is part of a nationwide movement of being more inclusive for minority students. And what will look different in these programs in New Mexico, what we're already, we're a majority minority state, so it seems to make sense here. Does it not? Is that the immediate first thing?
My personal opinion is just that ethnic studies in general is a good, I think it's a good area for everybody to take, whether it's in high school or college, and to be able to be exposed to different cultures and understand cultural sensitivities, I think makes you a better person, whether it's in business, politics, law, anything that you do. I think being able to relate to different people is a good thing. I think what's important in this case is, what kind of curriculum are they going to have? Like, are we talking about focusing on a particular group? Are we talking about focusing on New Mexico? Because we have such a diverse, I think, population here. We have obviously majority minority, but with the Pueblos and all the Indian tribes that we have here, it's really important that that be a significant part of the cultural sensitivity, because it isn't just white and other. I mean, there's just so many other cultures here. So to be able to incorporate a lot of that and to incorporate the history, not just sort of how things are now, but historically how things have progressed, I think is a really valuable tool.
That's right. Interesting. You're a teacher, obviously.
Absolutely.
What do you think about this? How does this affect you? Not necessarily your direct stuff at Anderson, but when you've got a fully rounded out high school student coming into a college environment, I have to think this is a better college student at that point. What do you think of that?
I think it's just, it's about being well-rounded in general and not just thinking about history in one particular way. Now, going back to Laura's point, thinking about the content of these courses is going to be really important, and then what other skills wind up getting developed. But when the history department at UNM offers a course in Irish history, that's not seen as controversial, but somehow the history of the Native American experience or the Hispanic experience, somehow that's seen as significantly more controversial. Partially, I'm married, because I'm married to a person who teaches religious studies. One of the big things that she really points out is that people barely even know their own religious traditions, much less anyone else's religious traditions. So just being aware of other traditions, other histories is good in and of itself, as long as it doesn't get so balkanized that it just becomes a course on grievances. And it doesn't really seem that these courses are set up for that.
Lana, interesting reading list the Journal had in there associated with their story. And some of the titles, I mean, we're talking full-on banging college-age student stuff here. I'm very excited about that. Why did it hit you when you see it like that? When you saw that list of books, did anything jump out at you? Not titles, but is this the right way to go, just in general terms for you?
Again, they got to really seek out this curriculum. What I was concerned about possibly is this, it's just a potential replication of New Mexico history. And students have had a lot of New Mexico history. I have three sons in the public schools, and they take New Mexico history a lot. And so thinking about this more nationally and particularly internationally makes a lot of sense, and bringing in a lot of different perspectives that way.
Eddie, we've had a neighboring state to the west, Arizona, had this dust up about ethnic studies there too. Do you anticipate a problem here with this idea? It seems very quiet as it stands now. What's your sense of it?
Not with our composition. I mean, I know in the political correctness and all the liberal dominance here in the state, I mean, it's, of course it's going to pass. Transgender bathrooms in Santa Fe pass. Albuquerque APS, there will hardly be people even say anything about that. I mean, people are just not going to speak up about this kind of stuff. And one of the things I was just perturbed by was the fact I looked at all the titles, all 34 books that were in there. 11 of them had race in there, racism. It had some form of that in there. And also in the title. Noticeably absent in the entire area was anything about my Spanish Jewish history. You talk about New Mexico history, largely absent from that is the largest part of our population here in the state is completely absent in any of those titles. That's kind of an interesting thing. Recently I took an ancestry thing, found out that I'm Jewish, where I come from, everything like that.
Had you known that before?
No, I hadn't.
Oh, no kidding.
No,
Congratulations.
it happens with an education from person to person, and thank goodness for I think it's the Hispanic genealogical, where I can basically trace everything back 11 generations and know who I am. It is important, to Laura's point, to know where you are, where you come from. The place for public funding for that, to know that, I don't think is something that we should support.
Let me ask you this though, what about the idea of shaping hearts and minds of students? Just going back to the basics of education, what we're supposed to do for students. Does this idea fit that basic education?
Oh, you're shaping hearts and minds, Gene, no doubt about it. You are shaping hearts and minds to focus on a past that you cannot change, from a history that's that's been written by other people with agendas, publicly funded, and you want to talk about divisiveness, well, you're going to have a lot of people coming up and celebrating their individual difference, not the fact that they're New Mexican, not the fact that they're American.
Right.
They're going to go into these little segments and come and talk about how different they are from you. What we need to do is bring people together. The focus on STEM, I think, needs to be first and foremost. We need to focus with a 62% graduation rate in the Albuquerque Public Schools, and this is what we're talking about keeping people in schools. I mean, we're going to talk about Chicano history, Aztlan history, all this kind of stuff. We've seen where that leads. We know what happens. You might be keeping those people in school, but I'll tell you, what's going to end up happening is they're going to just figure out more ways that they're different from everybody than rather reasons that they should get together and celebrate.
Do you dare follow that?
Of course. I'm impressed that he knows Aztlan history. You know, hey, Aztlan, why
She went
not?
to UCLA, so they know all about it.
Yeah, I went to
A lot of
UCLA,
Chicano
I went to
studies
University
come
of
from.
Arizona.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I could talk about all that. But no, I mean, you know, what's interesting in this reading list to me that also jumped out, which I think is an important one, is what about poor people? That's one of the titles. What about
Right.
poor people?
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, what about poor white people is
Right.
what one of the titles is. The Handbook of Social Justice and Education. I think it's important to incorporate a lot of different perspectives and views. So it shouldn't be just Mexican-American history. It shouldn't just be, you know, slavery and all that, but that should be a part of it.
There's
Jim
Asian
Crow,
American stuff. There's all
Asian
kinds of
American
things in
stuff.
that list, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I don't buy the idea that just because learning about your particular identity or someone else's identity creates, you know, an us versus them mentality.
Right.
I think it's about how it's presented, and I think more education is important all the way around in this situation. But I do agree also that it shouldn't take away from STEM. That is, I think, to me, one of the most important parts of it. And, you know, as somebody who's also taught college age and graduate level in this state, I think that you have to go back to your fundamentals of reading and writing. You know, I've taught graduate level writing courses, and the skill set just aren't there when they come up through, regardless whether it's APS or a different school in the state.
Sure.
And so anything that incorporates, you know, this is just a topic-based issue.
Right.
The skill set still needs to be there, and I think you still have to have the rigors of making sure that students walk away from there knowing how to write a basic memo, knowing how to write
That's
a
right.
basic
Not
email.
LMFAO
Right,
or
not
you know,
texting.
LOL or any of those type of things, right?
Or
Hashtag,
phonetically.
yeah.
There's so many kids that
Hashtag
write
Berkey.
phonetically.
But
Should be an
the other
emoji conversation.
The other thing is that these are not, it's great to talk about STEM, but not every student is into STEM. I mean, that's not where their
point.
skill set is. And
point.
so this is a different way to reach students. I mean, STEM is great, and we clearly need to improve those skills across the board. But, you know, history, writing, other things like that, and critical thinking as well, too. So in some sense, this is not just about the topical area itself. It's about reaching students where they are. Different students are going to have different needs, different strengths, and how do we build those in while at the same time generating real rigor?
Isn't that the point of the classroom, though, that these students get to hash all this stuff out at a
Right.
fairly tender age and really kind of get after it instead of being hardened adults where they've
Right.
got these fixed ideas about other minorities and such? Now you've got a chance to talk about these things in a controlled environment.
Right.
Which seems to me has a big
Well, if you
plus for
look
the
at what's
student.
been happening at a lot of universities this past year, I think part of the problem is that these conversations aren't being had in the high school level
That's right.
where there's more guidance. Then you have 18, 19, 20-year-olds with all sorts of freedom on campus, and we shouldn't be terribly surprised when they don't handle it particularly well.
That's right.
Far better to have a pedagogy that makes sense for high school students where you hash these issues out and you learn to hash these issues out. That's,
Right.
that's the piece that's really missing as someone who is getting ready to teach freshmen in the fall. And it seems to me that they don't know how to write, but they also don't even know how to read critically.
Interesting. That's all the time we have. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate it. All you guys. Good stuff.